Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest. Sonny Moyers is a highly educated real estate professional who graduated from Abilene Christian University. He obtained his Texas real estate license in 1971 and his Texas real estate broker's license in 1988. Sonny has excelled in the Dallas-Fort Worth real estate market, consistently ranking in the top 1% in Texas and top 4% nationwide between 2004 and 2018. As a president of the Renaissance Group, a real estate brokerage consulting publishing company, Sonny has received numerous accolades, including D Magazine Best of Dallas for 16 years and a Realtor of the Year award in Dallas in 2015. Additionally, Sonny has been actively involved in the community, serving as president of the board of Frisco Arts Association. Sonny, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Before we get into what you do, everything real estate related, I ask everybody a similar question, and that is, what brought you here? Are you from a family of entrepreneurs? Where does the entrepreneurial spirit come from within you?
Well, when I was in university, I met a gentleman. I was my second year at university. I was having a very difficult time. I was a football player, was on scholarship at Abilene Christian, but I had a wife and a baby. I didn't have any money, and that's a problem. I needed to find a way to take care of my family, and I started managing an apartment complex for a man. His name was W.R. Dick Kendrick in Abilene, and he owned shopping centers and apartments, and it's a wealthy individual, and he ran a brokerage firm, and he asked me to manage his apartment complex and later to become a licensed agent and work in his office. And I had a choice of working summers in Abilene in 103-degree heat and construction, or learning to be a real estate agent. And so I had the great pleasure of working in his office for several years, as I also managed his apartment complex. It was a small complex, only about 28 units.
Yeah.
And Mr. Kendrick was an entrepreneurial genius, and I observed and learned from him for several summers there. And that's how I got the entrepreneurial bug, and it never left me, even when I went to work for a big, large corporation. I was looking for a way to learn enough to get out and be on my own.
Yeah, I love that, Sonny. My story is somewhat similar in the sense of going to school with a wife and a child at the same time too, and you know, that fire and that need and the anxiety for not having the money to support people, it really fuels a lot of people for sure.
Right.
What inspired you to combine various real estate and sales topics into your book?
Well, I went back to school. I got my undergraduate in management with a minor in communications, but I always had a very strong interest in people and studying people. You've heard about people watchers, people who like to watch people. But I really like to study people and understand what makes them tick and why they do the things they do. And so I went back to get my master's degree in psychology with a mixed discipline of psychology, interpersonal communications, and research methodologies. So most people think of a real estate agent as this kind of a expressive, outgoing person, but not really an analytical person. I guess I'm a combination of both. So when I started putting the book together, the premise of the book is that too many people go into real estate, entrepreneurs going into real estate, thinking that it's going to be an easy road and they're going to be successful, and all they have to do is get a license and put their license with a very successful brokerage firm, and that the business will just come in and they'll be successful. And I've noticed a very high percentage of people who go into real estate failing, because I've been a realtor for 50 plus years. And so I started to write the book with the premise that people go into real estate with the wrong misconceptions. And then I used my background in psychology, my understanding of interpersonal communications theory, to write a book it's not about contracts. It's not about flipping homes, and it's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about how to build a real estate practice that will sustain through time and produce results and great service to clients over a long period of time, and how to build a business rather than just get a few sales in real estate. So I don't look at myself as a product salesperson, even though at the end of the day, I'm selling a home or doing a commercial office lease or something of that nature. So I look at it as a consultative role, helping solve problems and help people achieve their goals. And whether that's a home or getting a new office location with 20,000 square feet in a large building. So I was a very unusual agent in that I did commercial, residential, and consulting. And I had the background to do that. So 25 or 28 years ago, when we created our group at Ebby Halliday Realtors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, my wife and I were partners, and she did residential, I did commercial and consulting, and we created a very different business model. And that business model was highly successful over a long period of time. And that's what this book is about: how to build a real estate practice that stands up and continues to be profitable and successful while delivering superior service. And one thing I will mention is that probably the driving force behind what I've done is that I was very early at an age of, I'm 73 now, but at the age of 27 or 28, I had a very, I believed in the concept of self-actualization. If you remember from Maslow's theory of motivation, the higher level of self-actualization is when you're seeking to achieve something more than just safety, food, whatever the case might be. So at a very early age, I was looking for self-actualization. I was looking for something that would be satisfying to me, that would be something that I could provide value to others and support them. And it wasn't a money chase. It was really a goal of helping people, solving problems. And as a result, a natural result of that was we made a lot of money. Thank goodness we did, because life is tough and you have to be able to make money. But too many people go into real estate with the wrong misconceptions. And I think when they get their business model set up in the right way, they have a much more likely chance to be highly successful over time. And many people go into real estate are highly successful for 1 year, but then things dry up and they aren't able to sustain themselves over a period of years.
Why do you think that is? Why do they drop off after a year? Is it just losing energy, or?
Well, a lot of people go into real estate, and the first thing they do is they sell homes to their family, to their friends, and they have maybe the first 6 months is okay. But then when they have to have a marketing plan and they have to have a business model, Lance, I think a lot of people go into real estate who are very good in maybe one area. For example, they have a career, maybe they worked 10 or 12 years in retail, or maybe they were teaching, or maybe they were worked at a corporation in a technology area or something like that. But when you go into real estate, you don't have to just know how to sell. You have to know how to deal with people, and you have to know how to handle financial. You have to know how to handle technology, and you have to know how to manage an organization. And most people don't have I'd say, liberal arts skills, multiple skills to do that. And so when they get into business, they're often underfunded. They say, it looks easy to start a business. And if you ask most people, they think it's easy being a realtor. And the cost threshold to become a realtor is not huge. So they go into real estate and get their license, and they get their business cards printed, and they go out and get themselves a nice car, and they think the clients are just going to come to them. And that's not the way it is.
I know. I think you're right. My wife is a realtor, and it opened my eyes to from the perspective of from the outside in. It was. I think you're right that the general public thinks, oh, they're just showing a house and it's a done deal. I would love if you could just educate the public a little bit here, and why is it not that way? What are the things that realtors actually do for their clients?
Well, I think the number one thing, if you're a great realtor, is you focus first on client satisfaction and what they need, and you always put the client first. And so many realtors go into business thinking they're going to make a big paycheck, and they don't really think about putting the client first sometimes. And I think that's the real key here. You build relationships. Are you familiar with Malcolm Gladwell's writings?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the Blink, turning point or tipping point,
Mm-hmm.
David and Goliath. Many people go into real estate thinking that it's going to be easy, but what you find is that you have to have knowledge about a lot of different things. You have to put the client first. And as a result, and I believe it's in Tipping Point, Gladwell talks about the law of the few. You may remember that. The
Mm-hmm.
law of the few is that a few really good clients who really are raving fans, okay? That raving fans comes from a book called Ken Blanchard. But a few clients who really like you and really appreciate you because you put them first. Those clients become the ones who not only refer other people, but open up their sphere of influence to allow you to be successful. And so, there's 1,520,000 agents in the United States affiliated with the National Association of Realtors. There's 3 million agents in the United States. In the neighborhood I live in, which is a very nice neighborhood in the Prosper area in North Dallas, north of downtown,
Mm-hmm.
we have about 2,500 homes. There's 75 agents who live here
Mm-hmm.
for 2,500 homes. And there are hundreds of agents who want to do business in this neighborhood. The
Mm-hmm.
competition is intense.
Yeah.
And so what real people don't realize is you have to be able to stand out in a crowd. You have to be different. It's great if you're better, but you better be different because people can't tell. Most people think of real estate agents as being kind of ubiquitous. They're all pretty much the same. They're going to take me out and show me houses, and they're going to drive me around in their nice car, take me to lunch, and we're going to have a great time looking at homes, and then I'm going to choose one, and then after that, the agent's a nice person, goodbye, I'm done. Well, that's not what you want. What you want is a client who says, okay, I can see how Sonny can be a part of my life and my family's life and be a value and asset to me over time. And that person, I don't know, you're probably what, in your 30s?
Thank you for saying that. Sure.
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s.
Okay, well, you look very young to me. Because everybody looks young to me right now, Lance.
Okay.
But let's say that you have somebody who's 35 years old and they buy a home from you. You have the possibility of working with them for 20, 25 years.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to buy or move every 5 to 7 years. And they may have family members who want to join with them. In one transaction with a person who we might call a connector, and you might remember that term from Gladwell's writings also, that's a social person who has friends everywhere and knows everyone, and everybody knows them. One person like a connector that you connect with might be able to send you 20 or 25 transactions, or 20 or 25 transactions at 15 to 20,000 each.
Yeah.
That's a serious amount of money.
It is. Yeah.
So when realtors go in and look at it as I'm going to sell a house, that's not the goal. The goal is, for example, if you said to me, I want to go look at properties, I wouldn't qualify you to buy a home. I would qualify you to be a client for a long time.
Ooh, that's a nice, I love that.
And that's a different approach because you might be able to qualify for a home. And yeah, that would be a nice transaction. I'd get a paycheck, et cetera. What I really want is, Lance, is someone like you who's going to be here for 20, 25 years, who's going to buy multiple transactions over time and open up their sphere of influence so that I can help their friends. I can help the people they know, and that you'll refer me 15 or 20 people over a long period of time. I'll look at it as a client for life approach. But the main thing I'm looking at is whether or not you are the kind of person that will open up your sphere of influence and share with me because you want me to be successful. And why you want me to be successful is I did such a fantastic job for you. And I put you first in all matters. And as a result, you said, I want him. I want that person to continue to be a part of my life after the closing.
100%.
And I'll introduce a quick term to you. And I know you've got several questions you want to ask me, so I hope I'm not taking too much time.
Oh, you're great. You're doing great. Thank you.
Okay. A relationship with a client must survive closing. Now, that's a very interesting comment because most people say, what are you talking about? You see, our social conditioning thinks of us as, most people think of as an agent. I need an agent. I'm going to buy a home. Okay. I need an agent to help me with a contract and drive me around and show me the areas, et cetera. I'm going to go get me an agent. Okay, I got an agent now. They're going to drive me around. And most people think, well, they're going to find a home. They're going to go to closing. The agent's going to bring them a nice closing gift, maybe give them a bottle of wine at closing. And then the agent's going to go away. That's what most people think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not what we do. What we do is find a way that the relationship survives closing, that after the closing, yes, you've got your home now. Yes, your family is taken care of for a period of time, but you have a reason to stay in touch with me because you believe that I can be of benefit to you over the long term, not the short term. And it's not just a product sale. And that's why the consultative, collaborative approach to real estate is what I do. And it's what I teach in my book.
Yeah.
My book is not a quick read book. It's not a book you read in one night or 2 nights and you say, I got 4 or 5 good points from it. It's a book that might take you 3 months to read. And it's got 200 points in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's a textbook. It's not a quick read story about me and how much money I make.
Sure. You mentioned the National Association of Realtors, and I have to ask you, but this is sort
Sure.
of a combination question here, which is I would love your opinion on the recent ruling, which affects the buyer side agents more than the selling side agents. What do you think that's going to mean for buyer side's agents? Are they going to go the wayside? How are they actually going to get paid? I had my wife on, for this in regards to that too. She was very opinionated about it. I'm going to talk to another realtor in a couple weeks about it. But do you see this as a positive or a negative for your side of the coin? And the positive, do you see it as a positive or a negative on the buying side? As a potential buyer.
Well, let's just think about commercial real estate for just a minute. And I'm going to bring this back to explain this to you because it makes sense.
Okay.
When I was a tenant representative, okay, I would call up a building and say, my client is in the insurance business, for example. My client wants 20,000 square feet of space in a large building. And I would say to the representative of the building, what was your commission structure? And they would say, we pay 4.5% on a 5-year term. Okay. And I would say, okay, my client wants a 7-year term. Will you pay the 4.5% on the 7-year contract? And they would typically say yes. Okay. Now, that was an open communication and negotiation about the commission structure. Okay. Now, if I had to call 10 different buildings and find out what each would do, what they would pay before I showed my client. Now, let's go to residential real estate for a minute.
Yeah.
What the heart of the problem within residential real estate that we're talking about, all the issue comes back to a very simple thing. In MLS, the real estate agent would post, we are going to pay 3% to the agent who represents the buyer and brings the buyer. And out of my 6% commission, I will share that 3%. That's
Right.
the crux of how it was working. It's been working that way for a long time. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what all of this is about is very simple. MLS, an agent through MLS was not allowed to say to the listing agent, I want 4%. If they did, they were in violation of some of the codes within MLS. Now, that anti-negotiation approach is what resulted in most of the lawsuits that we're talking about. Okay. Now, go back to my commercial example. Everything was negotiable. Now, how is it going to affect me as a real estate agent today? Almost nothing will affect me. And here's why. I was always open to you saying to me, Sonny, you're only paying 3%. Would you pay me more? Because I'm a consultative, collaborative agent, and I was willing to listen to you, and I would not report you for asking for more money. Okay. And it also came back to, you might say to me, Sonny, if my client or a client might call up and say, if I don't have an agent, will I save any money? And so you had all these issues going on because there was a restricted playing field. Let's call it that. Now, if you remember on the commercial side, when I would call up a building director, I would say, you will pay 4.5%. Will you pay 5%? And they would say, no, we'll pay 4.5%. Will you pay it over 7 years versus 5? Yes, we will. It was an open negotiation approach there. Okay. You could ask for it. You weren't going to get criticized for asking for more. Okay. So that's the difference. What we're going to is more like the commercial way of dealing with people. So what's going to happen to the buyer agent? I know I'm going into the weeds here.
This is good
detail,
though.
Okay.
Yep.
But so let's say what's going to happen now. An agent's going to call me up and say, I have Lance who wants to look at this home for $800,000. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I see in MLS that you have not posted what you're paying. What are you paying for a buyer agent to represent Lance in a contract? And I would say, put it in the contract and let's talk about it. That's different.
It is different. Yeah.
You could write the
It's different.
contract for-
It's different though, which in the way that they got to the percentage, right? Of
Absolutely.
what okay. But they can still get to the percentage, right? And the listing agent can still, they can still say if they, in that discussion, oh yeah, I've negotiated with my seller 6% and I'm going to give you X. Yes.
I'm going to give you X. And they could say to me, well, I want 4. And I could say, okay, I'm getting 6%.
But
I'll split with you 4 too.
But I thought the NAR ruling also said that you can't, that the proceeds can't come out of, to pay the buyer's agent, they can't come out of the proceeds, right?
Well, in that case, they could say to me, the person representing who wants me to list their home could say to me, I only want to pay you 3%, and I want the buyer to pay their own fee.
Yes.
And I want the agent to get their money from someplace else.
So if they do that in that scenario, then how is the buyer's agent getting paid? Isn't it out of the pocket of the buyer?
Let's go. Here's how it would work. Okay. Here's an example of how it works. I don't know how it'll actually work because it's not been settled yet. They're still working on the promulgated forms, right?
Yes.
Every state's working on how the heck we deal with this. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I sign an agreement with you to represent you for looking for a home. And in that agreement, it says that you will pay me 2%, 3%, 5%, whatever we negotiate.
Yeah.
To help you find a home. Now, I also say to you that if the seller pays part of that, I will apply that amount to the amount that you agreed to pay me. So if you agreed to pay me 3 and the seller would agree to pay me 3, you don't have to pay anything. But if you say, I want you to help me find a home and you agree to pay me 3% and the seller will only pay me 1%, then you would owe me 2%.
Yeah. So don't you think that's really disadvantages for a buyer? Let's say they're, first time home buyer. Let's just paint that scenario. People to get to scrap together the 3.5% for an FHA loan, or if you're doing a conventional, like 10 or 20%, then that's already difficult in itself. And now we're asking, in that scenario, the last scenario we just went through, the buyers to come up with extra money out of pocket. Doesn't that seem like it's actually doing the opposite of what the NAR ruling was attempting to do?
Well, I think what the NAR ruling was attempting to do, I don't want to paraphrase that because I could have a hard time telling you. But the fact is that, yes, I do believe that the buyer will have a more difficult time in the future. However, let's go back and remember the fundamental concept of real estate. A buyer wants to buy a home and a seller wants to sell a home. Okay. Now, the two parties negotiate somehow to make that happen. And part of that negotiation is who pays the buyer agent and how much do they get paid. And then there's another relationship that exists between the buyer agent and the home buyer that says how much they agree to be paid. Yeah. And you work through that. So if you ask me, who I've sold a lot of real estate over a long period of time, I think there's very little difference in what we're going to be doing.
Okay, I appreciate your take, Sonny, on this. Really, I'm not trying to be
and the reason is,
yeah.
Look at it this way: I have a client right now who's listed a home for $1,595,000. Okay, now that seller wants to sell that home, and what they're looking at is what is their net gain after they pay their mortgage, if they have a mortgage. And after they pay all commissions and closing costs. They're looking at a net number. They're not even thinking about, they don't really care about who pays 3% to here and who pays 6% to there. They want to know, what am I going to net from the sale of this home? Okay. Now, so if you came to me and said, Sonny, I want the seller to pay 3% to me as the buyer agent, and I want them to sell the home for $1,594,000. I'm using that number just because I don't want to be ridiculous about what we talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, and I would say to the agent, you write up the contract, I'll present your offer to the client. The client's going to look at that contract and say, wait a minute, what's my net?
Yeah.
Who gets paid and how much and who pays it? What is my net? And if the net is acceptable to me, we'll do the deal. Now, what's different about that? They've always looked at what a net sheet in real estate is essentially telling a buyer or a seller how much they're going to need net or how much they're going to get net. Okay. So from a psychological perspective, the end result is the same. How much am I going to get when the party's over and we all go to closing and celebrate? How much am I going to get?
Yeah.
Well, how am I going to walk away from the table with? Now, in commercial real estate, when I rep with tenant representation in large buildings, I would call up this building and I would say, will you pay 4.5%? Will you pay over 7 years, et cetera? And they would say, yes. I would say, send me a rate sheet, send me a representation agreement, or a building agreement that says you're going to pay me that amount of money. I'm going to match us all together. We're going to get in a room. We're going to see who's going to net how much. And at the end of the day, we either do the deal or we don't.
Yeah.
So I see very, very little difference in my career.
And in the end goal, for sure. I think it's the front end. Yep. Where we'll
the logistics, Lance, of how they do this, and what the forms say, and what the legal requirements are on what's called promulgated forms that are required for agents to use in a state to practice real estate in that state. And it could vary between state to state. Okay. Like right now, the contract in Texas is different from the contract from Minnesota. Okay. So, and the way they work with attorneys is different. And the way they work with title companies is different today. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be a more complex method. It's going to be people are going to have to think a lot more about what's the net.
Yeah.
Because right now they think, well, I've got 6% for a listing fee, for example. I've done homes for 7%. I've done homes for 5%. So I've never had a 6% number. I've always had, what will you pay me to sell your home for? And that was a negotiation between me and my client. And it ended up meeting someplace where everybody's happy. Mm-hmm. I hope that's what happens in the future.
Me too.
For buyers, they go out and say, get an agent. And they say, look, I don't have the money to give you 3% and buy a home. Mm-hmm. Now, you're going to have to look for the money someplace else if you want to represent me. Now, when you go to investors, we're talking a whole different ballgame. Now, why are we talking different? An investor who is simply looking at the number, the house means nothing to them. Well, it means something in the sense it's a good home or a bad home.
Yeah. The emotional attachment is far less.
It's a financial decision.
Yeah.
It's a financial play, not I love this home. I fell in love with the backyard. Mm-hmm. How much money can I make on this home? Okay. Yeah. Well, so I think when it's all over, great real estate agents will make as much or more money than they made before.
I think so too. I think it's going to weed out.
Agents,
yeah, I think it's going to weed out.
Agents or listing agents.
Yes, I think it's going to weed out a lot of people that needed to be weeded out anyway. So
let me talk to you about a concept for a minute, okay? Lance, I'm sorry if I'm stepping on you here. Are we okay?
We're good.
Okay. Professionalism is synonymous with value. That concept is that when people see someone who's highly professional, highly competent in what they do, they intrinsically in their heads perceive them as having higher value. A buyer agent who presents to a buyer and convinces that buyer that they, by their skills and their professionalism, are worth more will not have a problem in the future. A buyer agent who cannot convince the buyer that they have the skill sets and the professionalism to provide benefit and value to the buyer in a transaction and negotiation will not do well in the future.
Yeah.
What's different about that?
Yeah. We'll see.
Bad agents always failed.
Right.
Agents who couldn't do marketing always lost at the end.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's just going to exacerbate, and which is, I think, hopefully a good thing. I mean, there's not going to be a perfect transition. It's not going to be a perfect end goal, but I am optimistic in the sense of you, in the way you are too. I do worry about the buyers though, so we'll have to see. I mean, if I was a realtor, what I would be doing is I would be trying to do as much public outreach as I possibly could to educate the buyers on how this all works and paint
Well,
the most rosiest picture for them in that way. But there is going to be the pinch point for a lot of folks where they go, wow, am I now priced out even further because I have to come up with this money out of my pocket?
well,
We're
you
coming up on the half
always
hour here, Sonny, and I got two questions I ask everybody as we
sure.
kind of end the interview. First one is, knowing what you know now, and if you could go back in time when you first started your business, what is one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Don't jump into real estate without a plan.
Beautiful.
You
Sonny,
got to have a business model, and the business model allows you to create a marketing plan. You have to know who you're going to sell to and why they're going to choose you. And you must, absolutely must, Lance, know how you are different from all the other agents and why you're better. And if you can't communicate that, I talk to agents who have been in business 5 years, and I say to them, why would someone choose you over the 75 other agents that are in your neighborhood? And they can't tell me. If they can't tell me why they should be chosen versus somebody else, they're going to have a problem.
where can people, if people want to pick up the book, Sonny, where can they follow you, and learn about it?
Well, the book's on Amazon and a lot of the other retailers. However, if they want to go to my book website, realestatebook.org, O-R-G, then they can buy the book there. And if they buy it there and they want me to, I'll inscribe it before we ship it to them. I would love to do that. But if they want to go to Amazon and Walmart, they can probably get a little bit better rate. It's not an easy book to read. It's complex. And I will tell you this one other quick thing. You can go to YouTube and just put into YouTube, Sonny R. Moyers, realtor, author. They'll come up with 12 to 15 hours of podcast where they can listen to and talk about the book, and have me like we're doing today. And then you can always go to sonnymoyers.com, which is my real estate website in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And Lance, I've had an excellent time today. Thank you very much. You've asked very probing and challenging questions, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being on, Sonny. We appreciate you and all you're doing.
Well, thank you and have a great day.